Hey everyone, and welcome to a much different version of the Chordcast that you are used to. I am your host, Chris, one of two, just in case this is the first time you're listening to this podcast. As I said in the last episode of the full show, we're going to be doing track breakdowns and track reviews and album reviews, sort of solo or as separate versions of the main show, just so we can sort of have the main Chordcast, which is more about discussion, and then if we want to review anything, either by ourselves or together, we can do that as well. And this is the first edition of that. Since Joelle is not a fan of Muse, as longtime listeners should know by now, I decided that I was going to be nice and not make her listen to Something Human, which is the most recent track released by the band. So I figured I'd do it by myself and just record a few minutes of me talking about it. To be perfectly honest, I don't have a whole lot to say at this point about Muse. Really, since right after the Second Law, I was a big fan of the Second Law, but Drones, once the marketing for that started and the singles started coming out, and when we got the full album, I've just not been into this band as much as I used to be. They used to be in my top three, and now it's really, I still like obviously their old stuff. I'm one of those Muse snobs that like to talk about how much the band has changed and they don't like it. Sorry, not sorry for that, but whatever. First time I heard this track, actually, it just released, I think, last week, but the first time I heard it was probably a week before that, when Matt did a acoustic version of the first verse and chorus of the song on Instagram. And honestly, it's pretty good. Like, it sort of reminded me, and I don't know if it was just the guitar he was playing and the tone of it, or even his voice, sort of sounded like old Muse, maybe something that we would hear on, like, not voice-wise, but maybe like structure-wise, something we might hear on even Showbiz, or even something around the Origin of Symmetry, or Hullabaloo soundtrack era. Maybe something like a B-side. That's sort of what it feels like. And I actually kind of got my hopes up a little bit. If you listen before when we talked about Thought Contagion, whenever that came out, I don't even remember when it was now, but I said that was sort of, it was an okay song. It was far from Muse's best, but it's sort of grown on me. Like, I don't listen to it really a lot. I can't tell you the last time I listened to it, but it's just an okay song. Like, it's not the best, but it's, I'll take it. It's better than Dig Down ever will be, ever, no matter what you do to it. This song is not as good as Thought Contagion, I will tell you that much. It's probably better than most of Drones was, but that's really it. It's not going to come close to even anything on The Resistance or The Second Law, which is arguably regarded as one of Muse's, or two of Muse's lesser liked albums as a whole. It starts off, okay, I guess. The further it gets, the better it gets, I think. There's a synthy vibe in the chorus, and then once you get past the first chorus and into the second verse, it really picks up. The beat sort of gets a little bit stronger. You start to add some drums and some different electronic elements in the background, but really it's not anything that's different. It doesn't really sound like some of the stuff that Muse has done before. Yes and no, sort of. But on the other hand, it doesn't really do anything new that we're not hearing other artists do. And that's really something that is different, or sort of disappointing for Muse, is because, if you go back and you listen to Origin of Symmetry, Absolution, Black Holes and Revelations, and even a little bit of The Resistance, like, you can tell that that's something that was never really mainstream. Like, yeah, you had Muse doing pop, or like slower songs, or when I remember when The Second Law was being teased before they released the first singles from that, the first thing they released from it was Unsustainable, which is just an instrumental track, and it was sort of their take on dubstep, which was popular at the time of that release back in 2012. And it was nothing revolutionary, but I don't think it was ever supposed to be. It was just supposed to be Muse's take on a popular genre. And, this is sort of, upbeat, sort of electro pop almost. And I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's, like I said earlier, it's much better than Dig Down. But it's not doing anything new to advance the progress of the band and the way we as fans interpret them, or the way new people, if they hear them, are going to interpret them. This is not a song that is going to really, I don't think, captivate anybody to be like, ooh, I like this band, let me go listen to them. That's really something that Muse, I think, has struggled with really ever since, I would say, The Resistance. That was probably the last time that they had something, in the case of Uprising, that was like a true, full-fledged radio hit that, got people into the band. Same thing with something like Supermassive Black Hole from Black Holes and Revelations. Pretty much all of Absolution was one of those things that when people heard it, they wanted to go listen to this band. If you hear Something Human on the radio, or if you hear it on Spotify or just out randomly, you might save the song, or you might like the song, but I don't think it's going to captivate you to go get new listeners. This is definitely a different genre, but Breaking Benjamin, with their most recent album, Ember, while it did nothing new to sort of help put faith back in some of the longtime fans, that album and the music that they put out for that sort of had that vibe of, well, if you're listening to it from the first time, maybe it has your attention enough to go check out the rest of the album or their earlier stuff. Muse did not do that with this song. I think maybe Thought Contagion could have. I can see where you hear that and you're like, oh, okay, maybe this is something a little bit different than what the current mainstream is. I might go listen to it. But aside from like a couple of moments in this track, really some of the maybe more acoustic stuff that's in the background, I really don't think it's anything special. I mean, is it a good song? Yeah, it's all right. Sort of better than what I was expecting. But it's not. It's one of those that if I'm listening to the full album that this will eventually be put on, then I'll hear it and I'm not going to skip over it, but I probably won't return to it. It's sort of a shame that that's what Muse has come to, but I mean, it's better than releasing complete garbage every time like Dig Down was. Overall, I'd say for longtime fans of Muse, this is not going to do anything that to reinvigorate their interest in the band. If they're someone that's lost it, it's not going to do anything that is really going to captivate anybody new. I think it's just going to exist. Good song, but just that's really all it has going for it. It's an okay pop song. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Muse. Honestly, I don't expect a whole lot out of this new album or EP or whatever they're doing. I know Matt mentioned before that they were going to sort of go along this line of, we're just going to release singles because like the album format is dead. I don't believe in that, but I mean, even though Spotify is a thing, I don't believe in the fact that you could just go release singles now. I don't think that works because it's just. I think it can work temporarily, but it doesn't work in the long run. But, we'll see. If this does come up on an album, I hope that it has some other things that really reignite my interest in this band, because otherwise I'll just keep listening to their old stuff and not really bother with the new stuff. So that's really all I have to say about it. I've gone on for pretty much 10 minutes now, so if you want to follow along with the rest of the podcast, you can find us on Twitter at the Chordcast. I'm at the Curse of Chris on Twitter. Joel is at xjoelmay. That's MAE at the end. And find us on iTunes or Google Play or whatever podcast app you're using. We're pretty accessible everywhere. and we should have a new episode soon. If you are a listener of the podcast already, then you're probably familiar that we're going through a little bit of a transitional period right now, but we hope to be able to put out some fresh content soon and just go from there. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.